commencing with the sun-drenched, olive oil-glistened realm of ancient Greece, a civilization renowned for its philosophy, democracy, and pants-free statues, we are immediately confronted with a contrasting reality. Beyond the illustrious tales involving Plato, Sparta, and grand temples lies the harsh truth of everyday life for the ordinary citizen, a struggle that would be formidable by modern standards. So, before settling in, kindly consider supporting this channel by liking the video and subscribing, but only if you genuinely appreciate the content. Share your location and current time in the comments. It's always intriguing to connect with viewers worldwide. Now, create a cozy ambiance by dimming the lights and perhaps switching on a fan for a subtle background buzz as we embark on this evening's journey. Welcome to ancient Greece, where your day commences not with an alarm, but with your abode transforming into a slow-cooking furnace under the sun's rays. Your humble dwelling, constructed from sun-dried mud bricks or crude stone, lacks glass windows, featuring only wooden shutters to ward off intruding goats and catch a hint of breeze if luck permits. Without insulation, ceiling fans, or the concept of personal space, except for the spot unoccupied by the family goat, your early rising is not a choice, but a necessity, due to the scorching temperatures that make horizontal rest unbearable. In the summer, the walls soak up heat like a sponge, emitting it back by sunrise, while in winter they turn chillingly cold, leaving you bundled in hopes of avoiding frostbite. In ancient Greece, you would sleep on a thin mat or a mattress stuffed with straw, perhaps using a rolled-up cloak or your arm as a pillow. If you were fortunate, the lice did not bother you during the night, though that was unlikely. There was no access to running water, so your morning routine involved a trip to the public fountain, or if you lived in a rural area, carrying water from a nearby well in clay jars balanced on your shoulders. You hoped silently that you wouldn't stumble and spill a week's worth of water, which would result in days of back pain. Cleaning up involved splashing your face, applying olive oil to your skin, and scraping it off with a stridle, a curved metal blade. Privacy was non-existent as your family shared the living space for sleeping, eating, and squabbling over who brought in mud from the street, which also served as your walkway, source of information, and garbage disposal. Despite not having eaten yet, your back ached, you were sweating, and your tunic clung uncomfortably. These discomforts marked the best part of your day. As you prepare for breakfast, brace yourself for a Spartan meal that makes today's intermittent fasting seem indulgent. Your first bite consisted of maza, a barley bread that was dense, stale, and as uninspiring as the soil it was baked near. Maza was created by mixing ground barley with water, shaping it into flat cakes, and baking it on hot stones or in the previous night's ashes. In ancient times, meals were simple and lacking in flavor, like an old granola bar, minus its sweetness and texture. Water wasn't always safe to drink, so it was common to mix it with wine for safety. Without modern water filtration systems or a convenient pot to boil water, the only option was to dilute the wine. Basic foods like figs, olives, or goat cheese were reserved for the wealthy, while the average person's bread often contained flies and was tough on the teeth. Breakfast lacked variety. No coffee, eggs, or fruits, unless you could barter with a nearby beekeeper. Eating was a hurried affair without chairs, forks, or mindful consumption. Women and children usually ate separately from the men, waiting their turn to eat disappointing meals after the males finished. Despite the Greeks' love for banquets and wine, breakfast held no poetic allure and was simply a necessary start to the day. Basic hygiene practices were also overlooked in ancient Greece, emphasizing the harsh realities of daily life and the struggle for survival. In ancient Greece, cleanliness wasn't a priority. Rather, it centered around rituals and oil, with soap being a luxury for future eras. A typical morning bath involved pouring cold water from a public fountain or courtyard basin over oneself. Unless living close to a bathhouse, shampoo, body wash, and sponges were rare commodities, with olive oil being the go-to for cleaning the skin. Scraping off the oil with a curved bronze blade left one less greasy but still somewhat unkempt. Picture dousing yourself in salad dressing and then shaving it off. That was the skincare routine. Personal hygiene was a communal affair, lacking privacy in ancient Greece. Dental care was basic, involving using twigs or crushed charcoal with vinegar rinses if one was fancy. Perfumes were used to mask body odor due to the absence of deodorants, creating a medley of musk, dust, and desperation. Laundry was infrequent, often involving beating clothes against river stones, especially for the less affluent. Essentially, hygiene in ancient Greece wasn't aimed at appearing or smelling pleasant. Improvements in cleanliness are noticeable today compared to yesterday. Despite employing the oil and scraping technique, its effectiveness is limited when enduring heat in a tunic under an unforgiving sun. While ancient Greece bestowed upon us democracy, philosophy, and architecture, the prospect of a refreshing shower remains unattained. After preparing for the day with the oil-scraping ritual, dressing in ancient Greek attire poses challenges due to its simplistic and impractical nature. The wardrobe mainly consists of two options, a chiton or a himation, both being oversized linen pieces secured with a brooch or a belt. These garments lack tailoring, fitting loosely and becoming vulnerable to sudden gusts of wind, potentially leading to embarrassing situations. Undergarments and bras are absent, offering no support but relying on pins to secure the attire. Footwear is limited to leather sandals or no shoes, exposing the feet to harsh walking conditions such as hot stones, rough terrain, and market debris on the roads. Sun protection like hats and sunscreen are absent during this era, leaving individuals vulnerable to the scorching sun rays that can cause sunburns and discomfort. By midday, the skin is burned, the feet are grimy, and the linen attire clings uncomfortably due to sweat. In Greek society, public nudity is not considered shocking. It is common to see men practicing at the gymnasium or politicians delivering speeches while wearing barely held-together garments. Those who are wealthy might have their tunics dyed in colors like soft purple or saffron yellow, but most people opt for off-white or brown due to the expense of dyes. Walking around dressed like a toga burrito, sunburned and sweating, is a daily occurrence for many, with the fear of a wardrobe malfunction in front of a priestess always looming. And this is only the halfway point of the day's tasks in ancient Greece. Military service is not just a job in this society. It is a civic duty and a social expectation, sometimes leading to an early demise. For free male citizens, particularly in Athens or Sparta, being a soldier is unavoidable. By their teenage years, training with wooden weapons and learning battle formations in phalanxes begins. In Sparta, boys endure a rigorous military training program, the agoge, starting at the age of 7, where only the strongest survive after being subjected to deprivation, punishment, and isolation. In Athens, military training is gentler but still obligatory, consisting of 2 years of training in the late teens, followed by decades of being on standby. There is no option to opt out by claiming to be more of a thinker, as even philosophers like Socrates participated in armed conflicts rather than just engaging in intellectual debates. Wars are a constant presence, whether it is Sparta against Athens, Athens against Persia, Sparta against various enemies, or neighboring city-states causing trouble over trade. In ancient Greece, conflict was a common occurrence among various routes. Peace was viewed as merely a temporary break between hostile invasions. Those who could afford it would acquire a set of protective armor consisting of a bronze helmet, breastplate, greaves, a round hop shield, and a spear. Those unable to afford armor were advised to avoid being in the front row during battles, as leather and cloth provided little protection against arrows. Soldiers were responsible for supplying their own equipment, bringing their own bronze to the battlefield. The less wealthy citizens had to either plead for gear, borrow it, or fight while lightly armed, which significantly increased their chances of being the first to perish in combat. When not engaged in warfare, soldiers spent their time training, maintaining their weapons, debating strategies in the assembly, or rowing warships for extended periods as part of the navy. As the trimes did not row themselves, there were no benefits such as veterans' health care, pensions, or therapy available to soldiers. Only physical scars, disabilities, and occasionally a crudely inscribed gravestone commemorating their bravery and courage. Life for women in ancient Greece, particularly in city-states like Athens, was even more challenging. Women had fewer rights compared to decorative urns, as they were denied the right to vote, hold office, own land independently, and were often required to have a male companion in public. Being seen outside too often could lead to rumors of being a courtesan, or even worse, a Spartan. A typical day for a woman involved starting chores before sunrise, which included tasks like spinning wool, weaving cloth, grinding grain, fetching water, baking bread, overseeing household slaves, if any, and tending to children. Despite being the household manager, women did not receive payment, respect, or time off. Their social activities were restricted, barring them from attending plays, engaging in philosophical discussions, or participating in gymnasium activities typically reserved for men. Isolated, mostly within the geosum and the women's quarters, your only connection to the outside world is fleeting glances through lattice windows. Education is limited. If you are fortunate, you may pick up some reading skills, but primarily you are instructed in household tasks, philosophy, rhetoric, and geometry, subjects reserved for boys. Your main duty is to secure a good marriage, bear sons, and remain unseen. Marriage often occurs at a young age, sometimes in your early teens, to a much older man chosen by your father, treating you more as a business transaction than a person. Love is not priority. Dowries are obligatory. Once you have children, your worth is primarily tied to your ability to bear more. Spartan women were an exception with more freedoms, being educated, exercising in public, and owning property. but their liberty stemmed from a state-driven emphasis on warfare and eugenics. Spartan women were tasked with birthing strong warriors or facing disgrace. In case of widowhood, inheritance rights were limited, remarriage required consent, and choices diminished rapidly. Legal, social, and physical constraints left most Greek women stranded. Despite the adulation of powerful goddesses, real women were expected to remain silent, at home, and unseen. Although ancient Athens claims the birth of democracy, participation was exclusive. Eligibility for the Athenian Ecclesia Assembly was restricted to male citizens over 18 born to Athenian parents, excluding a significant portion of the population, including women, foreigners, slaves, and children, who comprised nearly 90%. The population had no political representation at all, which does not align with the essence of a democratic system. Democracy in ancient Greece catered to a specific group of individuals, predominantly sunburned men in sandals. Eligible individuals weren't merely voters, but were required to partake consistently in the political process. Legislation was proposed, deliberated, and approved in massive gatherings comprising thousands of citizens. The absence of professional politicians meant that every qualified man held roles as a lawmaker, juror, and novice enthusiast. There existed a chance of being randomly selected for significant responsibilities, such as managing the treasury or sitting on a jury, through a lottery system. Although this method lacked prerequisites, it was plausible for your local fish seller to manage military operations one day, and for your eccentric uncle to preside over a murder trial the next. In the event that someone amassed excessive power, popularity, or caused irritation, they faced ostracism. This yearly practice allowed citizens to inscribe a name on a fragment of pottery, an ostracon, resulting in the individual's exile for a decade without trial or defense. Despite its imperfections, Athenian democracy was groundbreaking, as it permitted common men to have a say, at least certain common men, and laid the foundation for future political frameworks. Nonetheless, it was inherently unjust and exclusive. Muting women, taxed foreign-born residents, laboring slaves constructing the Parthenon, and inquisitive philosophers who risked execution. Democracy originated in ancient Greece, but urges for equal rights and inclusive governance would have been swiftly dismissed, requiring you to bring your ostracon along. Slavery wasn't just prevalent in ancient Greece, but was considered customary, with even modest households employing at least one enslaved individual. In ancient times, owning slaves in Athenian society was a common practice due to the deep entrenchment of slavery. Slaves were diverse, coming from various conquered regions like Thracia, Aea, Syria, and other Greek city-states. They were either born into servitude, captured in battles, or even abducted and traded. The slave trade was thriving and ruthless, with slaves performing all household tasks for their owners, from cooking and cleaning to managing affairs. It was ironic that while citizens debated abstract concepts like justice, slaves toiled in harsh conditions, such as in the Lauren silver mines, where they labored in dangerous environments. Despite their education and skills in various fields like teaching and finance, slaves remained as possessions without legal rights, vulnerable to maltreatment and even death at their owner's whim. Those who gained freedom as freedmen were still bound by loyalty to their former masters, and were denied basic rights like citizenship, leaving them with only a glimmer of hope for a better future. Unlike later times with abolition movements, ancient Greece lacked a widespread push to end slavery, with influential figures such as Aristotle justifying it as natural and necessary, perpetuating the oppression of enslaved individuals. The foundations of democracy and philosophy in ancient Greece were laid by individuals who were denied the right to voice their opinions, cast their votes, or have significance in society. The lack of access to health care in ancient Greece meant relying on uncertain remedies such as herbs, divine intervention, and hopeful wishes in the absence of hospitals. Illnesses and injuries were treated at home, seeking guidance from neighbors, prayers to healing gods, or finding comfort in temples. Greek doctors were a blend of herbalists, philosophers, and risk-takers who believed in the theory of the four bodily fluids causing imbalances leading to illnesses. Treatments varied from draining excess blood, fasting for too much phlegm, to activities like walking or gazing at the sea dramatically to counteract melancholy caused by black bile. Medical practices involved experimentation with remedies like crushed poppy seeds, boiled figs, or vinegary compresses made from goat scrapings, often resulting in uncertain outcomes and potential harm. Surgical procedures were scarce, frightening, and used as a final option, lacking modern comforts like pain relief or sanitation, making even minor procedures risky and life-threatening. Surgical tools consisted of iron knives and bone saws, combined with extensive prayers. Childbirth was perilous, managed by midwives amidst the challenging healthcare conditions of ancient Greece. Even during the most favorable circumstances, the mortality rates for women and infants were astonishingly high in ancient times. A single difficult birth, such as one involving a stuck shoulder or a breech presentation, often proved fatal. Wealthy individuals had the option of seeking out a traveling physician who boasted authentic credentials and specialized oils. In contrast, those who were less fortunate had to rely on local wisdom, makeshift remedies, and sheer determination for survival. Or they faced the grim possibility of not recovering. Nonetheless, there was some consolation in the fact that people in ancient Greece placed trust in the importance of rest, fresh air, and a well-rounded diet. While ancient Greek medicine introduced us to the Hippocratic Oath, it also prescribed peculiar treatments like consuming boiled cabbage water. Thus, healthcare in ancient Greece primarily revolved around herbal remedies, optimism, and perseverance. Theater in ancient Greece was more than a form of entertainment. It held significance as a civic obligation, a religious ceremony, and occasionally a profound experience for the soul. Citizens had the privilege of attending theater performances at no cost, assuming they were not women, slaves, or foreigners, who often faced challenges in accessing such events. The audience would gather in a massive, open-air amphitheater carved into a hillside, such as the renowned Theater of Dionysus in Athens, alongside thousands of other spectators. These gatherings would span an entire day, from sunrise to nightfall, featuring consecutive plays ranging from tragedies to comedies and satirical performances during the Dionysia festival. Attendees had to endure the entire event without breaks, refreshments, or even restroom facilities, except for a sparse bush on the hillside. Being late or causing disruptions could result in penalties rather than mere disapproval. The theatrical presentations themselves were intense, with tragedies evoking profound emotions through themes like murder, madness, and divine retribution spanning generations. On the other hand, comedies were characterized by satirical portrayals of public figures, philosophers, and entire communities, rather than light-hearted content suitable for all audiences. A play in ancient Greece was a vibrant and interactive experience, combining elements of Saturday Night Live with a college debate. Actors donned towering masks, platform shoes, and exaggerated costumes, even for female roles. The chorus provided commentary akin to an ancient Greek version of Twitter, but louder and clad in tunics. Audience participation was encouraged. They booed, hissed, threw objects, and debated during the performance. The theater was a place for democracy under the spotlight, where viewers expressed their reactions openly. At the festival's conclusion, a jury determined the winning playwright, sometimes surprising attendees who had been emotionally invested in a different production. The theatrical scene in ancient Greece involved active engagement, potentially involving throwing olives in response to the performance. Transitioning to the agora, the vibrant center of the city, you may encounter a cloaked man challenging strangers with philosophical inquiries about justice. In ancient Athens, philosophy was a popular pursuit, with figures like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle shaping transformative ideas. These thinkers, once perceived as eccentric, engaged in discussions that often left others feeling intellectually inadequate. For instance, Socrates was known for questioning individuals' beliefs and undermining their confidence in their own ideas unexpectedly, whether they were purchasing olives or interacting with animals. Certainly, delving into the concept of truth? Well, I suppose so. What exactly defines truth? This contemplation could lead one down a lengthy mental journey, perhaps even prompting an inclination to relocate to Sparta. Socrates, known for his lack of written works, passed on his teachings to his disciple, Plato. However, Socrates left a profound impact, notably as Athens eventually condemned him to death for his bothersome nature. Officially, the charges included corrupting the youth and impiety towards the gods. Realistically, his relentless questioning at social gatherings likely aggrieved many. Philosophy in ancient times was not a sedentary pursuit, but rather a vibrant and vigorous engagement. Debates unfolded in public spheres, characterized by spontaneity, intensity, and often culminating in emotional distress or profound philosophical introspection. No amplification devices were utilized, only voices, gestures, and an abundance of ego. Furthermore, onlookers were frequently drawn in by philosophers, as evidenced by the immersive nature of Plato's academy. Even youngsters were not exempt, as Aristotle mentored a young Alexander the Great, who later went on to conquer a significant portion of the known world. Picture a scenario where your high school instructor hands you a globe and instructs you to address global matters. Thus, philosophy not only contributed to the development of logic, ethics, science, and political ideologies, but also engendered mental strain, identity crises, and a high probability of being subjected to public mockery by a sandal-clad individual. In ancient Greece, imagine thriving in ancient Athens, articulate, astute, and engaged in politics. Despite being well regarded, you could inadvertently face repercussions for being excessively favored by the populace. This misstep could result in banishment from the city for a decade. Ostracism, a practice deeply entrenched in the system, was a lawful and public means of exclusion, distinct from arrest or fines. The practice of ostracism in Athens was both fascinating and frightening. Once annually, the citizens would convene to determine if an ostracism vote should be held. If the majority consented, individuals would inscribe the name of the person they wished to see exiled on a fragment of pottery called an ostracon. If someone garnered 6,000 or more votes, they were sent away. This process lacked trials or explanations. One simply packed up and departed. There was no requirement for one to be a criminal. Many exiled individuals were innocent, save for amassing too much influence. Whether a military hero, an eloquent orator, or simply possessing remarkable charisma, if deemed a threat to democracy by fellow citizens, you were banished. Surprisingly, ostracism was not permanent, lasting only a decade before one could return with their rights and possessions intact. Not even grudges were held. It was simply an unrequested 10-year hiatus. Notable figures like Aristides the Just and Themistocles, the savior of Athens at Salamis, faced exile due to their virtues or excessive confidence. Ostracism aimed to safeguard Athens from despots, but often penalized achievers. To navigate this delicate balance, ambitious individuals had to be respected without becoming too influential or charismatic. It was akin to a reality competition, where amassing too many admirers led to expulsion with dignity intact. Athens pioneered democracy, but also established an early form of cancel culture over 2 millennia ago. In ancient Greece, the idea of living a long life was not pondered. Rather, one questioned the timing and manner of their inevitable death. With an average life expectancy of about 30 to 35 years, surviving infancy was a significant achievement due to prevalent diseases, inadequate nutrition, and minimal hygiene practices. Fatality could come from various sources such as infected wounds, unexplained illnesses, complications during childbirth, a major risk for women, or even tainted water consumption. Medical resources were scarce, and reliance on divine intervention was unreliable. Urban areas were breeding grounds for diseases due to overcrowding, poor sanitation, and shared water sources, leading to frequent epidemics like the devastating plague that struck Athens during the Peloponnesian War, resulting in massive casualties. War was a constant threat, with men likely meeting their end in combat or succumbing to injuries without proper medical care. Death by angering the gods was a real possibility, whether through negligence in rituals or disrespectful behavior, potentially resulting in divine punishment, such as lightning strikes, diseases, or unusual accidents. Proper burial ceremonies were crucial, as failing to conduct them could result in being abandoned unceremoniously outside city limits, a tragic and dishonorable fate. Ancient Greek beliefs were fraught with spiritual peril. According to Greek mythology, souls that remained unburied wandered endlessly between realms. Death was not romantic, but a daily occurrence that disregarded one's beliefs, beauty, or status. Whether a slave, a general, or a poet, anyone could succumb to a simple moldy fig or a hostile mosquito without warning. The pantheon of 12 Greek gods residing on Mount Olympus was far from benevolent, while the religion preached harmony with the divine through worship of deities like Zeus, Hyas, Athena, and others. In reality, it was a constant battle to appease these capricious and powerful beings. Neglecting the correct sacrifice could lead to ruined crops, a misplaced prayer might sink a ship, and A wrong step in a sacred grove could result in snake bites, plagues, or famine. The gods demanded not only loyalty, but also meticulous timing, flawless rituals, and unwavering obedience. Worship was not limited to weekly temple visits, but encompassed daily rituals, home altars, seasonal festivities, and communal gatherings. Before sowing crops, prayers to Demeter were essential. Before going to war, offerings to Ares were required. And before setting sail, libations to Poseidon were a must. Each deity had their preferences and grudges, bestowing protection or curses based on past transgressions. While Apollo could safeguard a city, one ancestral mistake could bring about a lasting curse. Hera, goddess of marriage, could bless unions or bring misery to mortal women who caught Zeus's eye. Athena rewarded wisdom, but could also mete out transformations into creatures like spiders. Beyond the Olympian gods, nymphs, satyrs, river spirits, and monsters lurked at every turn, making it imperative to navigate sacred spaces cautiously to avoid unexpected repercussions. An angered forest spirit has claimed ownership of your left leg. The reasons behind unfortunate events remain a mystery to you. Was it due to an improper offering, timing, or perhaps an insult to a deity in a dream? It could even be traced back to your cousin, or a deed done by your great-grandfather. Ultimately, the ways of the gods are enigmatic and deeply personal. Despite the fear they instilled, Greek religion was interconnected with all aspects of life, including politics, childbirth, and the Olympic Games. Worshippers both feared and relied on the gods, with their temples serving as prominent city landmarks and their festivals becoming national celebrations. Through their myths, the gods explained phenomena ranging from lightning to love. Belief in the gods in ancient Greece was not solely based on faith, but also on a survival instinct. After experiencing the sun-soaked dwellings, simple breakfasts, blistered feet, wars, plagues, divine entities, and goat-related incidents, a straightforward question arises. Would you be able to endure a day in ancient Greece? The answer is most likely no. You would succumb before lunchtime. The intense heat, unfamiliar diet, and constant looming threats of war or divine retribution would swiftly dispel any idyllic notions of donning an Instagram-worthy toga. You are unaccustomed to fetching water at dawn or using a makeshift toilet next to a temple goat. The absence of running water, pain relief, and the freedom to voice complaints without risking exile via a pottery shard would be sorely missed. While the notion of living among exquisite marble statues, profound thinkers, and epic poets may seem appealing, these luxuries were reserved for the elite minority in ancient Greece. For the majority, life consisted of grueling labor, restricted rights, and frequent mourning. Participation in democracy was limited to male citizens. Medical remedies were basic, and the gods were often wrathful. Think of your social media as a man in the agora passionately debating justice while brandishing a fish. The Greeks persevered through it all, constructing, enduring temples, penning plays that continue to be staged, engaging in debates over ideas that still challenge us, and establishing the foundation for various fields, such as astronomy and ethics. Rather than merely enduring hardships, they flourished and contributed to civilization amid the challenges they faced. While you might struggle to survive, the ancient Greeks managed to thrive not because life was easy, but because they discovered ways to find significance in a chaotic world. They relentlessly questioned norms, engaged in constant battles, produced exquisite literature, had short lives, and yet managed to influence modern society. If you were transported back to their time, you might not last long due to the harsh conditions and intellectual challenges. However, if you managed to adapt and persevere, you would find yourself surrounded by some of history's most passionate, resilient, and complex individuals without facing judgment for the difficulties you encountered. Instead, they would encourage you to embrace the challenges and instruct you to carry out tasks like bringing an amphui up a hill. The story began with a tragic event and an act of betrayal involving Prasutagus, the ruler of the Aini tribe in what is now eastern England. During the 60 AD era, Prasutagus had adeptly played the political game with Rome, maintaining his position as a vassal king under Roman rule. Despite having wealth, independence, and peace, as long as he remained beneficial to the empire, his decision to leave a will aimed at safeguarding his people led to unforeseen consequences. By appointing the Roman emperor as a co-heir alongside his two young daughters, Prasutagus hoped to ensure their safety and sovereignty. However, Rome disregarded the will, refusing to negotiate, and instead seizing control. The Roman forces swiftly invaded the Iceni kingdom, laying claim to all its assets including lands, livestock, homes, and treasures. The theft of wealth was not the most egregious crime committed. What followed transformed a political insult into a personal nightmare. Queen Boudica was publicly flogged, not only to shame her, but also to convey a message: you are insignificant. To make matters worse, they abused her daughters in her presence. This was not just a crackdown, but a form of psychological warfare designed to crush the spirit of a people. Despite Rome's belief that they had defeated a minor tribal woman, they had in fact awakened a fierce queen. Boudica channeled her pain into a thirst for revenge. She became a force to be reckoned with, a mother whose anger would soon lead to chaos in cities. Rome underestimated the impact of their actions, thinking they had subdued a mere tribe. But they had actually roused a lioness. News of the brutality quickly spread throughout Britannia, uniting other tribes under the common cause of Boudica's wrath. The violation of one queen by Rome would ultimately lead to the empire facing a formidable uprising, exposing its vulnerability in Britannia. This was not merely an error, but the catalyst for a fierce rebellion that would challenge Roman authority. Boudica's defiance and leadership qualities defied Roman expectations, described by Roman historians, who seldom praised their foes as tall and fierce, with fiery red hair flowing down to her waist. She possessed a commanding voice that resonated like a war trumpet. Boudica was not just a queen by lineage, but a powerful symbol. Having transformed into a formidable threat, she initially underwent a profound change. Emerging as a mother bereft of everything, she refused to succumb to the Roman cruelty that sought to obliterate her dignity, her children's prospects, and her people's honor. Boudica grasped that Rome's greatest fear wasn't military might, but unity. Consequently, she set out to unite the tribes, beginning with the Trinantes, who had once thrived before Rome subjected them to heavy taxes, land confiscations, and forced labor. Speaking not as a diplomat, but as a resilient warrior mother, scarred yet unbowed, she evoked their forebears, their deities, and the earth they had lost. Inflicting her own anguish and fury onto her kinsmen, She garnered the attention of other tribes like the Coroltalvi, Coronovi, and even some Brigantes. What started as a quest for revenge evolved into a sacred mission to purge Britannia of Roman hubris. Her pledge was not safety, but honor and glory even in death. Riding alongside her warriors, not behind them, spear in hand, hair billowing in the wind, she fixed her gaze on the future, invoking the names of the violated, the enslaved, and the executed. She invoked deities such as Andrase, the Celtic war goddess, as witness, instilling belief in her fighters that the gods were on their side. Lacking formal military education or Roman tactical manuals, she wielded a more potent weapon, a seething, righteous wrath honed by treachery and steered by conviction. Under her leadership, the very land seemed to respond. This wasn't a mere revolt, but a rebirth. The Queen Rome thought it had vanquished now stood as the vanguard of a revolution. A rising force that was about to shake the empire to its core was just beginning to emerge. The Roman imperial symbol had reigned over Britannia for a long time, but now the prevailing winds were shifting. The intense anger of Boudicca was not merely a fleeting flame. It was a forceful storm, gathering with a chilling determination, and as with any storm, it required fuel. This fuel was drawn from the numerous Britons who had eagerly awaited for years, and even generations, for a leader to challenge the empire, someone who would not speak in Latin, but in the language of blood and iron. She provided them with that voice. It all began with military strategy discussions conducted beneath revered groves and moonlit hills. Boudicca did not sit on a throne. Instead, she stood on the ground alongside her people. She attentively listened to the frustrations of tribal elders, the grief of mothers, and the prophecies of druids who found signs in the heavens. They all echoed the same sentiment. Rome had crossed a line. It was now time to push back. Warriors from the Trinovantes tribe brought forth spears, slings, and ancient war songs. The Aeni offered cavalry units, consisting of agile riders adorned with untamed hair and battle paint, exhibiting a fierce and dauntless demeanor. Other tribes contributed with axes, swords, and fire. Even women took up arms, inspired by their queen. This wasn't just the formation of an army, it was a revival of Celtic heritage. However, Rome possessed trained legions, skilled, disciplined, and deadly soldiers wearing armor. Boudicca had to compensate for this by amassing greater numbers, a profound understanding of the terrain, and a sentiment that Rome could never instill. A deep-seated animosity born out of shame. Before long, Boudicca's forces swelled to tens of thousands. Farmers transitioned into warriors, hunters metamorphosed into assassins, and previous Roman captives and mistreated tribal confederates defected. These individuals were not soldiers fighting for wages. They were fighting for the memory of their past, for vengeance, and for the freedom to raise their children without shackles. Delivering her inaugural address, Boudicca commenced a series of speeches that would later be chronicled by Roman historians. Despite the bias in her words, the resounding message is unmistakable. She made a solemn vow to either emerge victorious or meet her demise. Surrender, submission, or retreat were not options. The initial target was Camulodunum, previously a British stronghold, but now a Roman settlement adorned with temples, statues, and lavish homes. The Claudia Temple, a tribute to the emperor who had overtaken them, was not considered sacred by Boudicca and her fighters. It was viewed as a deliberate taunt and marked as the first to be conquered. The murmurs of rebellion among the tribes had evolved into a forceful march, fueled by anger and under the unyielding leadership of a queen who refused to bow down. Camuladunum was doomed from the start. Once a proud Roman outpost, it transformed into a symbol of everything despised by Boudica's people. The city's pathways were no longer filled with tribal hymns, but with orders spoken in Latin. Its structures stood atop once hallowed land, with the temple of Claudius looming over all, a lavish structure erected through forced labor to honor the emperor who had subdued the Britons. While Rome saw it as a monument, Boudica saw it as a prime target. With her command, what unfolded was not a mere siege, but a swift execution. Her army descended upon the city like a relentless storm, catching the Roman settlers off guard, including many former soldiers who had oppressed and taxed the indigenous tribes. The city's feeble defenses crumbled as the few Roman troops within, ill-prepared for conflict, barricaded themselves in the temple, hoping it would withstand the siege. It did not. Within a span of 2 days, Boudica's forces breached the temple, staining the streets crimson. No one was spared in the onslaught. Men, women, and children fell victim to the savagery. Boudica's campaign was not solely strategic, it was deeply personal. Her warriors obliterated Roman statues, razed luxurious homes, and unleashed their fury upon. The temple became a symbol of the occupation when it was engulfed in flames, its roof collapsing in a fiery spectacle visible for miles. There were few survivors, and those who managed to escape shared terrifying accounts that shook the Romans to the core. The destruction was not arbitrary. It was a deliberate act of retribution by people who had witnessed their homes being seized, their deities ridiculed, and their daughters auctioned off. They were now taking back what had been unjustly taken from them, with added interest. Messages were sent to Governor Suetonius, who was dealing with another rebellion in Wales hundreds of miles away, pleading for help. However, by the time he received news of the fall of Camuladunum, it was already reduced to ashes and smoke. Its citizens perished, and the flames of rebellion burning higher. Boudica did not stick around to revel in the victory. She knew time was of the essence. Anticipating a harsh response from Rome, she pushed forward, recognizing that each triumph propelled her movement forward. Her next target was Londinium, a city more significant, wealthier, and even more susceptible than the last. If Rome had not taken her seriously before, they would certainly do so now after the fall of Camuladunum. However, revenge would not be complete until the heart of the Roman rule in Britannia felt the heat of rebellion. Londinium stood as the prized possession of Roman Britannia, established less than 2 decades earlier, evolving into a bustling center of commerce and governance. Merchants from various corners of the empire thronged its markets, while officials conducted imperial affairs under ornate roofs. Riches flowed through its streets unabated, until Boudica's advancing army stirred panic among its inhabitants. Governor Suetonius, returning hastily from Wales with a small force, reached Londinium just ahead of the uprising. Surveying the city's vulnerable, sprawling landscape, he made a ruthless decision when he saw the lack of defense. He chose to abandon it. With Roman legions stationed too far to provide support, Suetonius could not risk his limited troops in a city deemed indefensible. In his retreat, he took along those who could escape, leaving behind the elderly, the infirm, the obstinate, and those who hesitated to believe that an army led by a woman could defeat Rome. They would soon realize otherwise. Boudica's troops stormed into Londinium with great force. There were no obstacles to overcome, no barriers to breach. The city was defenseless, and she made it suffer. Her fighters rampaged through the streets with deep-seated fury. They did not plunder or occupy. They annihilated everything in their path. The slaughter was methodical. Roman civilians were forcibly removed from their homes. Entire families were slaughtered. Some were pierced with stakes, while others were burned alive in temples. No mercy was shown, and no Roman symbol was left unscathed. Mansions were set ablaze, warehouses went up in flames. The billowing smoke was visible for miles, swirling dark against the British sky. This was more than just a massacre. It was a declaration. The underlying message was clear. Rome could be defeated. Historical accounts by Tacitus and Cassius Dio suggest that tens of thousands perished. Some records indicate that the brutality surpassed even that of Camilla Dunham. To the Romans, this was not merely a rebellion, it was the apocalypse. Amidst the chaos, Boudica stood tall. She did not stay behind her officers, but led the charge on her chariot, accompanied by her daughters. She witnessed the empire's arrogance crumble at her feet. This was not mindless violence. It was retribution for the injustices inflicted by Rome upon her family, her people, and her homeland. And she was not done, for ahead lay another Roman stronghold, Verilium. Beyond that loomed Rome's inevitable retaliation. Rome had quelled uprisings in the past and waged wars across continents, but nothing quite like Boudica had ever been encountered. She was not a seasoned military strategist, did not speak Latin, and did not wear gleaming armor. Yet she had brought 2 Roman cities to their knees, razing cities to the ground and slaughtering thousands, both civilians and military personnel alike. Boudica had caused widespread destruction. The prosperous Romanized town of Verulamium, located northwest of Londinium, was set ablaze, sparking panic throughout the empire. Reports of her ruthless actions had reached the Roman Senate, prompting Emperor Nero to contemplate a complete withdrawal from Britannia. It was astonishing, the mighty empire, stretching from the African deserts to the Gerania Mountains, considering retreat due to the actions of a single woman with a chariot and a purpose. She instilled such fear in them. Boudica's power extended beyond her army. It lay in the symbolism she embodied. The Romans viewed themselves as invincible, their cities as timeless, and their dominance as inevitable. Yet, here was a Celtic queen, previously defeated and shamed, now leading a rebellion that left Roman settlements in ruins. Each city she destroyed wasn't just a strategic triumph, but a psychological blow as well. Verulamium suffered the same fate as Camulodunum and Londinium, affluent, Romanized, and lacking defenses. Her warriors massacred the residents, razed temples, and obliterated Roman structures. To this day, archaeological findings reveal a thick layer of ash beneath the current town, evidence of the intense inferno that scarred the land. However, a contradiction arose. With every conquest, Boudica's war apparatus grew bulkier. Her forces expanded, yet supply routes thinned, organizational efficiency waned. Some tribes grew complacent in their success, while Rome, renowned for its resilience, regrouped. Governor Suetonius didn't remain passive. He strategically withdrew and summoned reinforcements, consolidating battle-hardened legions from various regions. He strategized, analyzed the landscape, and readied his troops for a pivotal showdown. Nevertheless, despite Rome's resurgence, a lingering doubt persisted in the minds of each soldier. Could they halt her advance? Boudica wasn't merely a rebel leader. She represented a formidable and unprecedented threat to Roman authority. Engaged in fierce combat, she was rewriting the tale of conquest and demonstrating, one city after another in flames, that Rome was vulnerable and queens had the power to retaliate. With the upcoming ultimate confrontation, the empire was on edge, holding its breath. The flames had spread as far as they could, and now the clash of steel against the storm was imminent. Governor Gas Suetonius Pinus had meticulously selected his battleground, being no ordinary Roman officer, but a survivor. While Boudica's warriors reveled in their triumphs, Suetonius was strategic. He opted for a narrow passageway, a confined area flanked by woodlands and hills, nullifying Boudica's numerical superiority. Although his army was modest, around 10,000 strong, each soldier was a proficient warrior, honed in the rigor of the legions. Conversely, Boudica's troops were vast, with some accounts suggesting up to 200,000 fighters rallied under her flag. They were not seasoned soldiers, but rather peasants, craftsmen, tribal leaders, and seekers of freedom. Fueled by zeal but lacking discipline, armed with anger rather than strategy, they were convinced that sheer numbers would overwhelm Rome, yet they were mistaken. As Boudica's forces advanced, she delivered a final rallying cry. Positioned atop her war chariot, flanked by her daughters, she recounted their hardships, the lashings, violations, land seizures, and torched dwellings. Invoking the goddess Andre, appealing to their ancestors, she swore on victory or demise. Her warriors responded with thunderous roars, trusting in divine intervention. Subsequently, the battle commenced. The Britons charged forward with primal ferocity, but Suetonius stood his ground, allowing them to draw near, tightly packed within the confined landscape. Then, with precise timing, he unleashed the Roman onslaught. Spears hurled in unison, shields interlocked, short Roman swords swiftly cleaving through the disarrayed horde. Wave after wave of Britons fell. With each collision against an iron wall, the warriors shattered, allowing the Romans to advance methodically, accurately, and ruthlessly. As the Britons' families and carts trailed behind the army, anticipating the defeat of the Romans, they unwittingly obstructed the retreat of the warriors, leading to panic and transforming the battleground into a scene of massacre. After the dust had settled, tens of thousands of Britons lay lifeless, marking the end of the rebellion. Although the empire had been tested, it remained unbroken. Boudica, despite losing the battle, left a legacy that would outshine the clang of swords. The outcome of her fate remained veiled in mystery, yet her heroic tale was already immortalized. Amidst the silence that followed the war cries, the groans of the dying resonated. Boudica realized she had not only lost a battle, but a war she had ignited. The soil absorbed the blood of her people, while the remnants of their aspirations drifted in the chilly Britannic breeze. Despite her absence, Boudica's legend persisted. There were no verified reports of her final moments or demise, with conflicting narratives from Roman historians suggesting she might have ingested poison to evade capture, or succumbed quietly to an illness post-battle. What remained undisputed was her disappearance. She did not endure public shame in Rome. Instead, she faded away like a spent storm. Ultimately, her vanishing act elevated her beyond mere royalty, transforming her into a myth. Despite Rome's efforts to suppress the memory of her rebellion, Boudica's legacy persisted as a whispered tale of defiance. In tribal songs and whispered through the sacred groves, Boudica was not seen as a defeated rebel by the Britons, She was revered as a martyr, a war goddess seeking vengeance, a mother who bravely defied the mighty empire. Despite being viewed with fear by the Romans, there was an underlying respect for her. Tacitus, a staunch Roman, portrayed her not as a savage, but as a strong leader who had been wronged by the empire's arrogance. Cassius Dio noted her commanding presence and powerful speeches, instilling both fear and admiration. Throughout history, Boudica's legacy has endured. She is immortalized in Victorian statues, Tennyson's poems, history books, and educational curricula. She symbolizes resilience, especially for women who find inspiration in her unquenchable spirit. Her chariot, its spiked wheels transcending time, became a symbol of resistance. Though her physical form may be lost to time, her voice remains eternal, carried by the wind, resonating in flames, and echoing in the hearts of those who have stood against oppression, defiantly proclaiming, "I will not yield." Boudica may have faded from the annals of history centuries ago, but her influence still permeates the British Isles. Her name adorns monuments, her spirit is evoked in political discourse, and her presence is felt in the unyielding nature of a country that has not forgotten her. In London, a bronze statue near Westminster Bridge depicts her proudly on a war chariot with her daughters by her side, defiantly gazing towards the horizon. Below her, the hustle of traffic and unaware tourists mask the reverberations of her rebellion. Yet, her legacy transcends mere statues. It embodies the ideals she stood for. Boudica transcended mere battles and posed a timeless question to every empire or ruler who underestimated the power of the people. Though not flawless, her rebellion, stained with bloodshed and massacres resulting in tens of thousands of casualties, was a testament to resistance. Her enduring legacy lies not only in her defiance against Rome, but also in the inspiration she ignited in people's hearts. Despite losing everything, she stood tall as a defiant queen who refused to be defined by the empire that sought to crush her, transforming her sorrow into strength. While modern historians debate her role and motives, Boudica is remembered by Britons not as a mere historical figure, but as the queen who made Rome bleed, uniting warring tribes and demonstrating that dignity can emerge from devastation. She symbolizes rebellion, courage, and an unyielding will for freedom. Though Rome may have rebuilt and redrawn maps, her flame of resilience continues to burn in every struggle against oppression, every dissenting voice, and every soul unwilling to submit. Boudica may have passed, but her legendary spirit endures eternally. According to the ancients, illness was not random, but attributed to factors beyond contemporary understanding, like bacteria or viruses, a concept clarified much later in history. Illness was more than just a physical breakdown. It was a deeper disturbance that disrupted the harmony among the body, mind, soul, and nature. In Mesopotamia, diseases were often viewed as punishments from the divine. If someone got sick, it was believed that they had offended a deity, violated a taboo, or attracted a curse. Diagnosis didn't start with symptoms, but with inquiries about actions and potential offenses. Priests and healers collaborated to analyze signs, perform rituals, and offer herbal remedies besides casting spells. Ancient China emphasized balance through yin and yang, and the 5 elements in a more structured manner. Good health relied on maintaining equilibrium between opposing forces, as an imbalance in temperature or moisture could disrupt the body. Traditional Chinese medicine practitioners didn't just address symptoms. but also inquired about the onset, timing, and emotional aspects of ailments. Healing was comprehensive, utilizing herbs, acupuncture, and dietary adjustments to restore inner balance. In Greece, while the physician Hippocrates rejected the notion of diseases as punishments from gods, he still viewed health as a state of harmony. His theory of the four humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, shaped Western medicine for centuries, with each humor associated with a temperament and element that influenced both physical and personality traits. Various ancient cultures shared a common understanding that health was about completeness, not just the absence of pain, but the presence of equilibrium. Whether through Ayurvedic doshas in India or spiritual beliefs in African healing practices, ancient civilizations recognized that humans were interconnected with their surroundings. Disturbances in nature can result in nature pushing back. Ancient healers did not just rely on physical signs when treating the sick. They sought to identify imbalances and believed that to cure someone, one must address invisible forces with the same care given to visible wounds. In ancient Egypt, medicine was a blend of science and sorcery. The healers, known as SWNW, were considered more than physicians. They were seen as holy mediators between the human body and the divine realm. Their medical techniques were advanced, yet deeply intertwined with rituals and magic. Egyptians understood that bodily issues went beyond physical symptoms. Spiritual elements, deities, and even the afterlife played a role in every illness. Our knowledge of ancient Egyptian medicine mainly comes from texts like the Ebers Papyrus, dating back to 1550 BC. This ancient document contains numerous remedies for various ailments, from toothaches to tumors. Egyptian doctors performed surgeries, set fractures, treated infections, and used copper tools sterilized by fire to drain abscesses. They were skilled in pulse diagnosis, observing urine and feces for health evaluation, and utilizing a wide range of herbs that are still in use today. However, their treatments always began with seeking approval from the gods. Thoth, the god of healing, was believed to have bestowed the secrets of medicine upon humanity. The goddess Sekhmet, depicted with a lion's head and associated with war and diseases, was both revered and feared. She could bring about plagues or grant recovery. Incantations were chanted over patients during treatments, as words were believed to possess healing powers. A significant healing tool in their arsenal was honey, used as an antiseptic before the concept of bacteria was understood. Wounds were dressed with honey, sometimes mixed with resin or lint. Garlic and onions were also commonly used in their medical practices. Prescriptions for heart health were given. Castor oil was used as a laxative, and even moldy bread was applied to infected wounds as an early form of antibiotic treatment. Egyptian doctors were highly respected, treating both commoners and royalty. Their expertise crossed borders, with neighboring civilizations seeking out Egyptian physicians for challenging cases. They were considered specialists, focusing on various areas such as the stomach, eyes, or spiritual ailments. In their vast knowledge, they saw no distinction between the physical and the sacred. Fevers were believed to be caused by Nile mosquitoes or angry spirits. Healing involved not only treating the body, but also pleasing the gods, cleansing the soul, and restoring divine harmony. Ancient Egyptians saw healers as essential not just for curing ailments, but for maintaining cosmic order. India had already established a healing tradition known as Ayurveda, viewing the human body as a microcosm of the universe. Ayurveda, a Sanskrit term meaning science of life, is deeply rooted in the Vedic tradition. It is not merely a medical system, but a holistic philosophy promoting harmony with nature, seasons, and spirit. Central to Ayurveda are the three doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, representing unique combinations of earth, water, fire, air, and ether elements. Vata governs movement. Pitta controls transformation like digestion, and Kapha manages structure and stability. Every individual is born with a specific dosha balance, and illnesses occur when this equilibrium is disrupted by diet, stress, environment, or lifestyle factors. Ancient Ayurvedic texts, like Karaka Samhita and Sushruta Samhita, dating back over 2,000 years, offer comprehensive guidance and herbal remedies for maintaining health and wellness. Charaka was focused on internal medicine, emphasizing prevention as the primary defense strategy, whereas Sushruta is renowned for his innovative surgical techniques, which included more than 300 procedures and 120 instruments crafted from various materials like wood and metal. His remarkable skill included performing rhinoplasty by reconstructing noses using skin flaps from patients' cheeks or foreheads, not for cosmetic purposes, but to restore facial disfigurements inflicted as punishment centuries before modern medicine advanced. Although Sushruta made significant contributions to the field, Ayurveda's holistic approach shines through in its belief that healing the body is interconnected with healing the mind and spirit. This ancient practice employs herbal remedies, yoga, breathing exercises, oil massages, meditative fasting, and plants such as turmeric, ashwagandha, neem, and tulsi for their medicinal and purifying properties. Ayurvedic healers not only treat physical ailments with herbs, but also address sleep patterns, emotional well-being, and digestive health to restore balance in the body, as Ayurveda teaches that humans are an integral part of nature and should strive to align themselves with its harmony. In ancient China, health revolved around the concept of energy known as qi, which flowed through all living beings, and maintaining its free flow was crucial for overall well-being. This principle laid the foundation for traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, one of the world's oldest medical systems, where practitioners studied nature's patterns, seasons, lunar phases, animal behavior, and cosmic events to comprehend illness and health. Two fundamental principles, yin and yang, along with the 5 elements of wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, formed the basis of ancient Chinese medicine. Yin and yang symbolized equilibrium in all aspects of life. Yin embodied coolness, darkness, passivity, and internal aspects, while yang represented heat, brightness, activity, and external aspects. These opposing yet harmonious forces categorized every organ, emotion, and bodily function. Maintaining health involved sustaining a dynamic equilibrium between them. A fever was not just a temperature rise, but signified an excess of yang, while fatigue could indicate yin depletion. Diagnosing illnesses was considered an art, with physicians relying on observations rather than tools, examining the tongue, feeling the pulse at various points, listening to the voice tone, and inquiring about dreams, emotions, and bowel movements. Each detail provided insight into the balance or imbalance of qi. Various techniques were employed to restore health, including acupuncture, moxibustion, cupping, herbal remedies, qigong exercises, and dietary adjustments. The ancient text known as the Yellow Emperor's Inner Canon, compiled approximately 2,000 years ago, serves as the cornerstone of traditional Chinese medicine, TCM. By delving into causes, prevention, and lifestyle factors of diseases, it emphasized that emotions like anger, grief, and fear could disrupt organs, underscoring the importance of emotional balance alongside physical treatments. Chinese medicine viewed individuals holistically, considering not just the body, but also the environment, spirit, and invisible energy. According to ancient beliefs, every heartbeat conveyed the language of qi, and healers must attentively listen to restore balance. The transition from a divine perspective to a rational one marked the starting point of medicine. Nevertheless, the human body was still perceived as a delicate ecosystem governed by balance and temperament. A pivotal concept that influenced Western medicine for centuries was the theory of the four humors, initially introduced by the Greek physician Hippocrates, and later elaborated upon by Roman medical experts like Galen. According to this theory, the body was regulated by four fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, each associated with an element: air, water, fire, and earth, and a particular temperament. Wellness depended on maintaining a harmonious balance of these fluids, while illness resulted from an excess or deficiency of any humor. Treatment strategies included bloodletting, purging, tailored diets, and baths to restore equilibrium. The Greeks not only focused on bodily fluids, but also emphasized the significance of observation and surroundings in the healing process. The Hippocratic Oath, guiding modern medical ethics, stressed the importance of meticulous patient observation and holistic care. Hippocrates advised, considering external factors like seasons, winds, water quality, and the patient's emotional state. Healing centers dedicated to the god Asclepius were established across Greece, serving as spiritual havens and offering various therapies such as sleep in sacred dormitories to induce healing dreams, ritual purification, physical activity, dietary adjustments, and prayer. These sanctuaries harmoniously combined logic and spirituality. In Rome, medical practices were further refined with the emergence of Galen, a Greek physician who attended to gladiators and emperors, conducted animal dissections to study anatomy, authored numerous medical texts, and contributed to the widespread adoption of humorism across the empire. Galen's impact endured for many years, despite some inaccuracies in his theories. Although originating from mystical practices, Greco-Man medicine started embracing a new concept that viewed the human body as a complex yet understandable system that could be restored to balance through reason, rituals, and the skillful practice of healing, rather than solely relying on divine intervention. Before the establishment of formal medical education and written records, ancient societies worldwide relied on traditional wisdom passed down through oral traditions, spiritual visions, and practical experiences with nature to heal their communities. In these cultures, healing was not merely a profession, but an integral part of daily life interwoven with rituals, seasonal cycles, and sacred observances. Amongst Native American tribes, healers, known as medicine men and women, played diverse roles beyond physical healing, serving as spiritual mentors, storytellers, advisors, and custodians of ancestral wisdom. Ailments were viewed as disruptions in the individual's connection with nature, community, spirits, or themselves, necessitating more than just herbal remedies, but a reestablishment of harmony. Indigenous tribes possessed profound knowledge of medicinal plants, utilizing various roots, leaves, and barks for different purposes, such as pain relief, fever reduction, and wound healing, with sacred herbs like sage, cedar, sweetgrass, and tobacco being used in purification ceremonies to cleanse the body and soul. However, the essence of healing extended beyond the physical ingredients to include intentions, rituals, and reverence, with healers often collaborating with spiritual energies through practices like sweat lodges, vision quests, and drum circles, or their efforts to restore well-being. In the case of a breach in tabas, spiritual possession, or soul loss due to trauma, a part of the individual's essence could flee. Rituals such as soul retrieval would then be performed to call back the spirit using chanting, dancing, or guided trance. This deep respect for nature can be observed in indigenous practices worldwide. In the Amazon rainforest, shamans use potent plant medicines like ayahuasca, a hallucinogenic brew not for leisure, but for healing purposes, believing that the plants themselves are teachers, revealing insights through visions. Aboriginal Australians utilize bush medicine, consisting of herbs, clays, and traditions passed through the dream time, the ancestral period shaping their cultural identity. Healing is centered on balancing the body, land, ancestors, and songlines. These healing traditions were not documented in books, but lived through the songs, dances, and landscapes of the indigenous people. While modern medicine relies on machines and laboratories, indigenous healers have always considered the earth as the primary source of healing, emphasizing reconnecting with one's true self rather than merely combating diseases. Throughout ancient civilizations, regardless of language, location, or belief system, one common belief prevailed. Healing involved more than physical remedies and surgical procedures. It necessitated spiritual elements. Whether illnesses were viewed as divine retribution, spiritual disharmony, or a disruption in sacred forces, ancient societies perceived that true healing commenced in the unseen realm, with rituals serving as the gateway to this world. In Mesopotamia, predating the development of formal medicine, exorcists and priests were sought to combat illnesses caused by malevolent spirits or displeased deities. Clay tablets contained elaborate healing rituals where incantations were recited while applying sacred ointments. Special figurines were buried beneath homes to ward off sickness. Rituals were intertwined with everyday aspects of society. Treatment methods varied across different ancient cultures. In ancient Egypt, physicians would always begin their work by seeking the blessings of the gods. Prior to administering honey or bandaging an injury, prayers were recited to deities such as the god of wisdom or Sekhmet, the goddess associated with healing and wrath. It was believed that illnesses were not merely physical, but also represented a disruption in cosmic balance. Restoration of health was seen as a realignment with Mahat, the principle of truth, order, and harmony. In various African traditions, Healers known as Gangas or Sangomas would use drumming, dancing, and divination for diagnosis and treatment, communication with ancestors, spirit summoning, and entering trance-like states to journey through the spiritual realm for patients' well-being were common practices. While herbs were essential, consultations with the unseen world were prioritized. Even in classical Greece, rituals were integral. Patients at healing temples like Ascapa would undergo purification ceremonies, fasting, and prayer, sleeping in Enkoia surrounded by statues of Asclepius, the healing god, to receive guidance through interpreted dreams by temple priests. Rituals were viewed as a structured aspect, providing meaning to suffering and offering a sense of control and connection amidst chaos and pain. The power of belief, intention, and the placebo effect have been explored through scientific studies today, suggesting the therapeutic impact recognized by the ancients. The significance of spoken words in healing, transcending physical wounds with unseen medicines, has been acknowledged since ancient times. The common notion of crude surgical practices in antiquity overlooks the sophistication and human aspect of ancient surgical techniques practiced worldwide. In the past, early healers practiced surgery with remarkable accuracy. They did not have modern tools like anesthesia, X-rays, or antiseptics, but they relied on their expertise, bravery, and deep knowledge of the human body passed down through generations of experience and necessity. One notable example is the Sushruta Samhita, a text from over 2,000 years ago in India that detailed over 300 surgical procedures. Sushruta, its author, is recognized as the pioneer of surgery for his innovative techniques in tumor removal, bone setting, hernia repair, and even reconstructive nose surgery, an early form of plastic surgery. His arsenal consisted of a variety of sharp tools such as forceps, scalpels, probes, and needles made from iron or stone, meticulously organized. Sushruta emphasized cleanliness, surgical preparation, and the significance of anatomical knowledge through dissection, mostly performed on animals. His surgical knowledge spread beyond India, influencing Islamic and Western medical practices for centuries to come. In ancient Egypt, surgical practices were intertwined with rituals, as seen in papyrus texts detailing wound stitching, limb relocation, and abscess drainage. Tools like bronze knives, bone saws, and cauterizing rods have been unearthed in tombs, showcasing the sophistication of their procedures, including trepanation, a procedure to relieve head injuries by creating a hole in the skull. Remarkably, evidence of successful trepanation can be seen in many healed skulls, indicating the patient's survival. This surgical practice was not unique to Egypt. In pre-Columbian Peru, hundreds of trepanned skulls have been discovered, particularly among injured warriors. These ancient surgeons achieved impressive success rates, with over 80% of patients surviving in certain regions due to effective bone regeneration techniques. To manage pain, they likely utilized cocoa leaves, fermented maize beer, and herbal antiseptics. In the Greco-Roman era, Galen revolutionized surgical methods by studying gladiators' injuries and dissecting animals to advance understanding of the nervous system and vascular systems, laying the groundwork for future anatomical studies. Roman military surgeons demonstrated efficiency in treating battlefield wounds using cautery clamps and ligatures, showcasing the evolution and refinement of surgical techniques over time. Despite its inherent risks, the practice of early medicine was held in high regard. Those daring enough to delve into the mysteries of life, seeking to alleviate suffering through their mastery of surgical techniques, were not mere practitioners, but skilled artisans wielding the blade. Their expertise, though not comprehensive, endures each time a scalpel is raised in the service of healing, not harm. Today's medical landscape is marked by cutting-edge technologies, robotic procedures, and advanced genetic analysis. Rapid body scans and remote prescription services have revolutionized healthcare delivery. Yet, remnants of ancient healing traditions persist in modern medicine, with practices like Ayurveda, Chinese herbal medicine, and indigenous rituals finding a place alongside conventional treatments. Medical students still uphold a version of the Hippocratic Oath, vowing to prioritize patient well-being, echoing the ethos of their Greco-Roman forerunners. Surgical instruments trace their lineage back to the innovative tools of Sushruta, the principles of comprehensive care, preventive health measures, and the interconnectedness of mind and body, now integral to integrative medicine, have their roots in ancient cultures that viewed healing as a holistic endeavor. Even contemporary scientific research corroborates age-old beliefs, revealing how stress, social isolation, and emotional trauma can impact the body's defenses, disrupt sleep, and trigger physical ailments. Meditation, once a spiritual practice, is now scientifically validated for its cognitive benefits. Nature-based therapies like forest bathing are prescribed for anxiety, drawing from indigenous healing traditions. The enigmatic placebo effect, driven by the power of belief, continues to intrigue modern scientists. While ancient healing practices may seem archaic at first glance, a deeper examination reveals a profound approach to treating illness based on a comprehensive understanding of the human condition. Rather than being viewed as a malfunctioning machine, illness was seen as a disruption in well-being, signaling disharmony. This concept remains relevant as medicine encompasses more than just treatment. It includes finding meaning, providing comfort, and feeling seen and understood. Ancient civilizations inherently understood this, recognizing the sacred nature of healing, whether through chants, traditional practices, or modern methods. The advancement of biotechnology, artificial intelligence, and personalized medicine doesn't necessarily detach us from the past. It may bring us back with new resources while embracing the same human values. The human heart still seeks balance, wholeness, and healing, not solely physical but spiritual restoration. Her name, Sappho, a poetess hailing from Lesbos around 630 BCE, lingers in history like a faint tune. She diverged from the conventional heroes of ancient Greece, gaining fame through her emotional verses that resonated with love, jealousy, beauty, despair, joy, and yearning. Sappho's poetry encapsulated fleeting moments of emotion, immortalizing them like delicate yet everlasting pressed flowers. Although there is scant information about her life, with no surviving portraits or diaries, fragments of her work endure, revered by ancient scholars and later generations alike. Despite the mystery surrounding her existence, Sappho's brilliance shone through, earning her the title of the 10th Muse by Plato, and inspiring countless seekers to reconstruct her narrative like a captivating, unfinished melody. Born into a noble family on the island of Lesbos, Sappho's legacy transcends time, capturing the essence of the human experience through her evocative poetry. In the northeastern Aegean Sea lies an island that was a center of music and learning, where poetry played an integral role in society. She may have had siblings, a daughter, and even political adversaries, although historical records are unclear. Enduring periods of exile and turmoil, moments of quiet and moments of melody shaped her life. In a society where most women were relegated to the domestic sphere, or silenced altogether, Sappho broke the mold. While she didn't rebel outright, she distinguished herself through her artistry and grace. Composing in the Aeolian dialect, she crafted concise, evocative verses meant to be sung to the lyre. Her poetry was intimate and teeming with vivid imagery. Lines such as, "Evening star, you bring back all that the shining day has scattered," transcended eras. Just as quietly as she emerged in historical records, she faded away, despite much of her work being lost, destroyed, buried, or disregarded. What remains attests to her legacy. Sappho didn't require grand monuments. Her poems served as her enduring monument. Even today, when we speak of impassioned verse, unashamed love, and timeless yearning, we whisper the name Sappho. To grasp Sappho, one must first grasp Lesbos, the island that nurtured her voice. Lesbos wasn't a remote outpost. It stood as a vibrant center of art, music, and philosophy in the ancient Greek world. With its lush valleys, olive orchards, and coastal breezes redolent of salt and blossoms, Lesbos was both a physical haven and a cultural treasure. It wasn't striving to be Athens. It possessed its own unhurried, more sensual pace, steeped in lyrical heritage. Music was not ornamental here. It was a form of worship. The lyre's melodies resonated through households and sanctuaries. Poetry was sung aloud, not merely read. In this realm of harmonies and natural beauty, Sappho's voice emerged. She resided located in the city of Mytilene. The lively center of the island was a thriving political and artistic hub. Lesbos was renowned for its poets, philosophers, conflicting factions, and ever-changing alliances. Sappho, amidst political turmoil, faced exile, possibly to Sicily, yet her longing always led her back to Lesbos, her inspiration and muse. The island also fostered a unique female community, uncommon in ancient times. Elite young women received education in music, poetry, and rituals, with some scholars suggesting Sappho led a group or school where women were taught lyric poetry, dance, and devotion to the goddess Aphrodite. This was not a formal education system, but a sacred sisterhood of creativity and spirituality. Sappho's deep emotional and possibly romantic connections with these women were evident in her direct addresses to them, expressing longing, admiration, and love with raw sincerity. Her intimate writings reveal a world of real women gathered together, sharing their emotions through song and poetry. Despite later distortions of her legacy with scandal and speculation, Lesbos remained the nurturing ground for her authentic voice, embodying passion, artistry, and female empowerment. Sappho not only resided on Lesbos, but embodied its essence, expressing its soul, its essence, and its voice. In an era dominated by epic tales of gods, heroes, and warfare, Sappho's poetry delved into the intricacies of the human heart, portraying moments of vulnerability and tenderness rather than glorifying battles and conquests. Her voice sent a shiver through her body. She was among the first poets in Western history to express herself in the first person. Instead of just recounting events, she delved into the emotions behind them. What resonated through her works were love, yearning, envy, affection, and passion. Remarkably, she addressed women as a woman, discussing matters relevant to them. During ancient Greece, women's voices were mostly confined to domestic settings or silenced altogether. Public affairs, literature, politics, and philosophy were male domains. However, Sappho ventured beyond these boundaries, not through defiance, but through verse. Her poetry didn't request space. It carved out its own realm. This realm was a personal sanctuary, where emotions weren't viewed as weaknesses, but as sources of strength. In this realm, she did something revolutionary. She identified the women she cherished by name, honoring their essence beyond mere symbols or metaphors. She recollected their joy, fragrance, and unique hair braiding styles. In one fragment, she encapsulates the overwhelming feeling of encountering a beloved. He appears as divine as the gods. That man sitting next to you, savoring your melodious voice and admiring your enchanting laughter. Oh, it quickens my heartbeat. In this instance, Sappho observes from afar, witnessing the woman she loves engage with another. Her jealousy is subdued, poignant, and profoundly human. In a few verses, she encapsulates the heaviness of unreciprocated love, a sentiment timeless and relatable to all. Her verses conveyed sensuality without crossing into vulgarity. She painted sensuous scenes with meticulous detail, a neck's curve, the tranquility of sleep, the caress of moonlight on skin. She intertwined beauty and intimacy seamlessly. This fusion often led to misinterpretations or censorship in later eras. Some attempted to erase her nonconformity, while others sensationalized her heartache as tragedy. Nevertheless, none of these attempts can diminish her legacy. Sappho's voice spoke with a raw honesty, a poetic bravery about love born from her deep and unapologetic experiences. She didn't simply write poetry. She orchestrated music that resonated with the soul. Her verses were intended for more than just silent contemplation. In ancient Greece, poetry was a living, breathing entity filled with sound, breath, and vibration. Sappho's chosen form was the lyric, concise, intensely personal, and meant to be performed alongside a lyre, a small stringed instrument, plucked gently as her voice carried the words like a gentle breeze over the sea. This was the essence of lyric poetry, the origin of the term lyrical. Her poetry wasn't grandiose or epic, focused on war and deities. It was intimate, emotional, and immediate. The lyric was a secret confession, a love note sung under fig trees or in softly lit rooms, and Sappho was its unmatched master. Crafted in Aeolic Greek, a dialect known for its softness and rhythm, her poems followed a specific meter, the Sapphic stanza, with 3 long lines leading to a shorter, impactful one, akin to a sigh concluding a yearning thought. It possessed a subtle, melodic quality, mirroring the ebb and flow of breath in a tender moment between lovers. Sappho likely performed these songs among women, students, and possibly priestesses, in gatherings that were both ritualistic and educational, spaces where emotions, music, and body were united rather than divided. Through her performances, Sappho not only shared her poetic compositions, but also cultivated a cultural legacy. While we can only speculate on the exact sounds that filled these performances, the gentle twang of strings, the clear resonance of her voice, the profound stillness of the surroundings. One thing remains certain. Sappho's artistry transcends time. Her poems captivated audiences with each word. Sappho often began her works not with statements, but with questions or prayers, setting the tone for a dialogue or invocation. Her verses reached towards the divine and delved into human desires, yet they possess a surprisingly contemporary feel. Even today, one could set her poems to music and evoke the same raw, genuine emotions. Sappho transformed poetry into melodies, emphasizing that emotions are akin to music. Every heartache and thrilling sensation merits a tune. Her legacy resonates through centuries, despite only having fragments of her work remaining. Countless lines of her poetry have been lost over time, leaving behind only fragments infused with intense emotions and remnants of sound. These broken pieces still radiate with vitality, reminiscent of fading embers from a once brilliant flame. The disappearance of her work can be attributed to the passage of time, warfare, and deliberate destruction. Over time, her 9 volumes of collected works housed in the renowned Library of Alexandria were lost, along with many other ancient texts. As Christian influence rose, works like Sappho's, which embrace themes of passion and same-sex love, were censored or destroyed. By the medieval era, her voice was on the brink of oblivion, surviving only through snippets quoted by other authors in various literary forms. Fragments were frequently recognized for their stylistic elements and vocabulary, rather than their emotional impact. However, these pieces still conveyed emotions subtly. The discovery of papyri marked a significant turning point. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, archaeologists unearthed numerous fragments of ancient manuscripts in Oxyrhynchus, Egypt, including torn and faded lines of Sappho's songs that had been unseen for centuries. More findings emerged, such as a nearly complete poem found in 2004 wrapped around a mummy in Germany. Each find felt like a revival, yet much of Sappho's work remains lost. Presently, we engage with her work through echoes, yearning not only for what she penned, but also for what she might have voiced without historical disruptions. Despite this, the survival of her work in fragments holds an eerie significance. Sappho's focus on impermanence, fleeting moments, and beauty, slipping away like sand, is mirrored in this fragmented form. It feels fitting that her poetry reaches us as an enigma, pieced together by admirers of language, music, and emotion. A voice that once faced suppression continues to resonate. Sappho's candid poetry was unable to evade scrutiny. During her era, she was revered and hailed as a lyrical poetry maestro, even being labeled by Plato as the 10th muse, placed among the divine. Over time, her legacy became distorted, silenced, or scandalized as societal norms evolved. Why? Because she openly explored love in a manner that made history uncomfortable. Her works largely revolved around deep affection and longing for women, celebrating their beauty, lamenting their absence, confessing jealousy, and honoring their closeness. In her world, this was not unusual. However, in the cultural context of Lesbos and evolving societies, her writings faced varying reactions and interpretations. Aristocratic women, especially, embraced close emotional and potentially romantic connections, which were even revered. In later eras, such as during Roman, Christian, and Victorian times, there was a struggle with accepting these bonds. Instead of facing the reality, subsequent generations chose to rewrite her narrative. Medieval scribes overlooked her, Renaissance translators softened her words, and Victorians depicted her as a tragic romantic, mourning a man, and even fabricated the tale of her leaping from a cliff for the love of a ferryman named Fionn, a story not found in her genuine works. This fabricated account was created to erase her nonconformity, portraying her pain as more digestible and her desires as more conventional. Some critics reduced her poetry to being purely educational or platonic, while others deemed it indecent. Despite this, Sappho's name endured, persisting even amidst scandal. During the 19th century, when discussing same-sex love openly was still taboo, her legacy covertly evolved into a coded symbol of queer identity, with the terms sapphic and lesbian arising from her name and background to describe romantic love. Between women, unintentionally, she became a symbol of resistance, a poetic forebear for those whose affections were silenced. Even today, discussions continue, questioning her identity as a teacher, a lover, a myth, or a challenge. Perhaps the more pertinent query is, why do we still fear her truth? Sappho did not conform to societal norms in her writing and expressed her genuine emotions. She acknowledged beauty, revealed her yearning, and experienced life through poetry. Her scandal did not lie in her actions, but in her forthrightness. She had the courage to convey desire through her writing, for which history tried to silence her voice, but failed. If there was a divine entity that influenced Sappho's life and body of work, it was Aphrodite, the goddess of love, beauty, and irresistible longing. To Sappho, Aphrodite embodied the relationship between Sappho and Aphrodite was more than just a myth. Aphrodite served as a source of inspiration, a confidant, and a comforting presence during times of intense emotions. Sappho's poetry, particularly in her renowned Ode to Aphrodite, showcases her not only praising the goddess, but also directly addressing her, seeking solace and fulfillment from her divine powers. Sappho's depiction of love is not condemned as sinful or feeble, but rather as a divine and sacred force capable of moving a goddess like Aphrodite. Aphrodite represented more than romance in the ancient world. She symbolized attraction, seduction, and the complexities of love, including its ability to wound as well as to delight. Sappho's poems captured the dual nature of love, portraying its sweetness and pain, its beauty and harshness. By integrating Aphrodite into her emotional landscape, Sappho transformed longing into a mythic experience, blurring the boundaries between personal emotions and cosmic influences, and establishing a literary tradition where love was revered as a form of devotion. Sappho saw Aphrodite not as an abstract goddess, but as a reflection of human emotions, intense, confusing, and beautiful. In each of Sappho's verses, the goddess of love is seen as listening and responding. The circumstances surrounding Sappho's death remain shrouded in mystery and legend. There is uncertainty about her age at death, the time it occurred, and her whereabouts in her final years. Despite differing accounts, some suggest a peaceful passing on Lesbos, while others present tragic tales of her leaping to her death from white cliffs out of unrequited love for a ferryman. There exists no historical evidence to support the latter narrative. This tragic story seems to be a fabricated attempt by a male-dominated literary tradition to reshape Sappho's narrative into a heterosexual tragedy, obscuring her actual voice and experiences. The truth is more straightforward yet profound. Sappho faded away quietly after her death, leaving behind a legacy that endured for centuries. Her work was revered by scholars, referenced by dramatists, and performed throughout the ancient Greek world. Despite attaining comparable fame to Homer in her time, societal norms shifted with the ascent of the Roman Empire and the prominence of Christian morals, causing Sappho's emotional and sensual poems, particularly those celebrating female love, to fall out of favor. As a result, her writings were no longer copied and her volumes dwindled, eventually succumbing to the passage of time and neglect. Early church officials deliberately destroyed her works, perceiving her songs as a threat. Although her name persisted through the Middle Ages, her actual writings were largely eradicated. It wasn't until centuries later that fragments of her poetry resurfaced, either uncovered from Egyptian rubbish mounds or cited in ancient texts. She experienced a gradual revival, not through myth, but by sheer survival. While her demise may have been forgotten over time, her vanishing act was never absolute. She endured in hushed tones, in pilfered phrases scrawled in margins, in the enduring yearning of voices determined not to be silenced. Sappho didn't require a grandiose demise, as her verses were already immortal, and within the void where her words once thrived, we can still discern the essence of her being. Longing, incomplete, yet never truly extinguished. Though her life remains veiled in obscurity, her poetry fragmented and unresolved, her impact has never waned. If anything, it has only intensified, resembling a flickering candle that refuses to be extinguished. Throughout history, individuals have rediscovered her legacy. During the Renaissance, scholars pored over her remnants, captivated by her skillful manipulation of emotions. In the Romantic era, poets such as Byron and Shelley invoked her name. In subsequent centuries, as discussions on gender and identity resurged, Sappho emerged as a symbol of LGBTQ+ resilience, feminine creativity, and emotional liberation. Her name endures within language itself, with Sapphic, denoting romantic love between women, and lesbian, derived from her birthplace, now representing a global identity. These terms transcend mere definitions. They embody fragments of her existence. They serve as evidence that a voice can reverberate across time and reshape our comprehension of love and self-expression. Artists, writers, and musicians continue to find inspiration in her, with painters envisioning her bathed in the moonlight. The lyre has been a subject of numerous translations by poets, each interpretation delving into the essence beyond the mere words. Modern writers have re-envisioned her in novels, songs, and plays, breathing new life into her persona. Through all these representations, one fact stands out clearly. Sappho's words resonate on a universal level. The fragmented nature of her poems and the vagueness of her biography are inconsequential. What truly matters is the raw emotion that pulsates beneath her verses, the exuberant thrill of desire, the piercing pang of separation, and the reverence for beauty. These emotions are shared by all of us, and Sappho found a way to articulate them. This ability may be her ultimate legacy. It's not the statues in her honor or the scholarly analyses, but the enduring impact of her words that transcend time, evoking a pause, a breath, and a sense of connection even after millennia. Sappho's genius lay not just in her poetry, but in her ability to embody emotions. She elevated feeling to an art form and transformed yearning into a profound truth. In this way, She transcended being just a poet, becoming a reflection for those who have loved quietly, passionately, or against all odds. As long as language serves as a conduit for human emotions, Sappho's presence will endure, not just in memory, but in the very essence of being felt.